to another week, another show of Hawkeye with me, Dave O'Hara. Momentarily, you'll see our buddy Adam Haluska joining us. Adam, of course, as you know, has joined us throughout this 6-year run on television, throughout the years, but also throughout the year, a couple times a year, but especially this time of year during March Madness as we record this on Wednesday, March 11th, the afternoon, after the Hawkeyes won this morning, an early afternoon over Maryland in the their first round game, second round of the Big Ten tournament in Chicago. Adam, of course, as you know, a second-round draft pick in the NBA, had a great run at Iowa his junior year with Jeff Horner and Greg Bruner and the rest of that crew. Adam, of course, was all-state everything in high school and then rolls on into Iowa, transferring from Iowa State. Adam had a great 3-year run as the Hawkeyes. And, Adam, I got to tell you, you and I were talking off the air. Let's bring it on the air. But first and foremost, as always, great to see you as always, and thanks for joining us. How you doing?
Absolutely. Always good to see you guys and good to be here.
These conference tournament times are special times, aren't they?
They are. Yeah, you get really 12 hours sometimes to prep. And, a lot of times you just, you can use some of these teams you played in the Big Ten. We didn't play Ohio State all that long ago. We've seen Maryland a couple times this year. So it's nice when you get a little familiarity. But, again, when you get to this time of year, things reset real quick. There's a lot of late night, kind of studying plays, knowing personnel from the other team. So you just got to come ready, and you got to be able to start off hot and take it one day at a time. You could look at it two ways, right? You can have the bye and you're sitting there waiting to play. I think I always got a little bit of an advantage. You're kind of a little seasoned to the court. You get a game underneath your belt. You roll right into the next game. You kind of get into that mode. I think this coaching staff has done a good job of getting these guys ready mentally. A lot of these guys played and they won the tournament last year in the Missouri Valley, so they understand. But you just got to take it one game at a time, and you can't look too far ahead because you got to win to survive. And yeah, you look at Ohio State. We got them tomorrow on Thursday. You just got to come out ready. Let's have a better start than what we had today. And yeah, you get into this tournament mode. You just never know. And if you can win 5 games in 5 days, that's a heck of an accomplishment. That's why I think for those other teams, though, it's nice if you get that double or triple bye. It just lessens the load to make a big run in the tournament. I mean, you can tell Bennett's getting a lot of, when he's averaging over 20 points in the conference, he's taking on a big load of that offense. The way we run some of the point zoom action, he's constantly coming back. You're getting high pick and rolls. They're looking for mismatches. If you can stretch it out and you got a guy like Coop in the corner or just searching shots on the perimeter, knocking a few of those down definitely helps our bigs down low. You saw Banks and Mannion had a good day today. We're going to need more scoring production to make these runs, because if they really get tight on Bennett and it makes it hard for him to score, we need some other guys to step up. And, we talked before getting on air, Voulgaris is another name. He's been quiet, but he's capable of going off for 20 plus. We're just going to need more guys to keep, finding their shots, get confidence. Combs had a great finish in the Nebraska game, getting downhill, taking the ball to the basket. The more we can get production from these other guys, it's going to take the load off Bennett and, give us opportunities to win some of these close games.
When you mentioned Voulgaris, and I look at the game against Nebraska before this Maryland game, and where he had an incredible, you look at the stat line, and it was like 7 points, 7 rebounds, 6 assists. But some of those assists were huge coming down the stretch and in overtime, and at least the start of the overtime. So you nailed it perfectly. And that's what this postseason is all about, Adam, as you know. You have to have somebody who's not normally a major contributor, and they've been looking for Voulgaris all year, and he's had games, as you mentioned, intermittently. But this is the time of year to make that happen, and you brought that up earlier. Someone from somewhere is going to have to step out of the shadows.
Yeah, and we're going to need some shots. And, Isaiah Howard hit a big shot today. Just the confidence these guys need, and you just see the offensive flow. When we're clicking, we look really good. When things get a little stagnant, offensively, we slow down to a point where we're taking tough shots at the end of a shot clock. Now, I know we want to limit possessions, but yeah, we get some of these guys scoring and you get their confidence level up. I think Iowa's a dangerous team and, one that can make a run here.
Before this Maryland victory today, the Hawks' first round game in the Big Ten tournament, second round game overall. But Hawks finished going into this tournament at 20-11 in the regular season, 10-10 in the Big Ten. And you know the magic numbers, Adam. Win 20 games in the regular season, win 10 or at least half your games in the Big Ten, because now it's a 20-game schedule.
Yeah.
That should get them in. And again, now with the Maryland victory today, that only helps. But I think they're at an 8 or 9 seed. They'd have to do something Herculean and incredible in this Big Ten tournament to go up from an 8 or 9 seed to a 6 or 7, or specifically a 7. I think they're probably locked in there. But give me your takeaway, or give us your takeaway on this first season as a whole with Sturtz, McCollum, the whole crew, please, Adam.
Yeah, I mean, I think we did our part in the preseason. We won games that we were supposed to. Really played Iowa State tough at home in a tough environment. And then you start Big Ten play, and you get baptized by fire heading up to East Lansing playing Michigan State. We've got some great wins on our schedule. You look when we went out to the West Coast and made a nice run out there, won a couple big games on the road, took care of UCLA at home. There's some nice wins on our resume. It was great to get Nebraska at home, when they're a top 10 team. But all in all, I've been really happy. I mean, this is a great team. They play well together. They're fun to watch. They play good defense. And obviously there's some size mismatches at times, but the Big Ten's loaded at the top. I mean, you look at some of these teams, it's a gauntlet. And I think for us to be in a position where we're making the tournament and coach's first real, season here, and a lot of these guys, fresh faces. I mean, the only real returning guy was Coop, and he was hurt last year for most of the year. So really pleased, and it's just a matter of getting there. I think if we can get there and win a game or two or make a run, you just never know. But we talked earlier, that 8-9 game is tough because you look at college basketball, there's that top 10 team, if you look at just the 1 seeds and the 2 seeds, there's some really good talented teams there with a lot of experience. So 8-9 games a tough one, but you just got to take it one game at a time. And again, with this team, you never know. I mean, look how we played Michigan at home. And I would say it's not even our best basketball, but we're going to find ways to slow the game down or find the mismatches. And I like where this team's headed.
I love that. I agree with you and Coach McCollum. Close games are great against the tough opponents, but now, as Ben McCollum said, I'm tired of losing close games. So hopefully they can take that experience and close those games out. But Adam, let's take a pause here. We'll come back in the second segment, talk some Hawkeye women's basketball, and then we'll close out in the third and final segment, talking an overall your playing career experience at Iowa in the NCAA tournament, and moving that all around and analyzing that throughout college basketball. So, folks, there he is, former Hawkeye basketball playing great and NBA player Adam Haluska. I am Dave O'Hara with Hawkeye. We'll be back with more in just a few moments.
Hawkeye is brought to you by BettorEdge, your ultimate social betting marketplace. With no VIG, you're bound to win more on every bet on BettorEdge. Founded by Hawkeye alum James Siles and proud Iowan Greg Kajewski, BettorEdge delivers an unmatched betting experience. Plus, what's not to love when they're committed to supporting charities and children's hospitals near you? Join the action now. Sign up at bettoredge.com/Hawkeye and get $10 to start winning more today. BettorEdge, where your social betting means your bets go further and you win more.
Welcome back to Hawkeye with me, Dave O'Hara. Soon to be just on screen, Adam Haluska. Adam, as you know, former Hawkeye basketball playing great. Second round pick in the NBA draft in his years, and Adam's got great experiences. Won a Big Ten tournament title. He's going to talk about that. And he talked a little bit about that in the first segment, but we'll get into that in the third and final segment. But in this segment here, Adam, let's talk, you and I, a little bit about the Hawkeye women's basketball team. Give us your assessment of Jan Jensen and her team, especially in year 2 of the Jensen era.
I mean, you saw some pieces come together. Early on, as fans, we're trying to figure out what this team's going to look like. Tough loss at Iowa State. But, man, and once we hit Big Ten, I felt like this team really came together. They won some huge games on the road, at home. And, I mean, I think the staff gets a lot of credit. You look at Ava Heiden's development. We kind of talked about that earlier. We saw what she did to kind of finish off her freshman year. And she really rolled into a Big Ten season that, I mean, she's one of the top centers in the country. And so Hannah's had a great part. Chit Chat's been a huge addition. I'm missing on names here, but all of them have collectively came together. And even when we've had some injuries or some, gals that have been out, somebody, has stepped up. And again, I don't think a lot of people saw us sitting at second in the Big Ten with all those teams, all the, just the travel. And there's a lot of good teams in that Big Ten. And to come out second, I know we laid a tough one there in the championship game in the Big Ten tournament, but we played some great basketball leading up to that, and they shot incredibly well. We didn't. It wasn't our kind of finest effort, but now they can get some rest, get focused, have some home games, and make a run in this NCAA tournament. And again, where they sit right now, they're going to get a great seed. And I think a lot of it just comes down to seeding, getting a home game. And I can't speak for enough. I think Jan did a remarkable job and her staff. And a lot of credit goes to the kids. I mean, they battled and played hard, and they've been fun to watch. And looking forward to the run in the tournament.
Yeah, you hit all the pertinent names. I mean, you look at Ava Hayden and all Big Ten, and then you look and like with Bennett Sturts on the men's side, all Big Ten. Congrats to him, but also congrats Ava, and then Hannah Stolke, second team all Big Ten, had a great year, and then defensive on an all defensive team, Kylie Feuerbach, and then you mentioned Chit Chat Wright with her offense, dealing with the Taylor McCabe injury, but then you had Taylor Stremlo jumping in off the bench into the starting lineup and doing so well. So you look at that, and you had bench help. You had the 6'5" Layla Hayes, the true freshman, coming in off the bench. And you had Addie Deal, coming into her own as a freshman, and much heralded. And they've got great recruits coming in next year. So, 26-6 overall at the Big Ten tournament, and then 15-3 in the regular season of the Big Ten. They will host 2 first-round games, provided they win that first game in the NCAA tournament. So another home series potentially for the Hawkeye women. So, couldn't be happier. But, Adam, you know this, and when somebody like Taylor McCabe, and there were times she's had great games in shooting, but just her overall leadership as a senior along with Feuerbach and Hannah Stolke, and you take a look at that, and Jada Jimphy, a bench player, a role player off the bench, was injured and gone all year too. But even though it's a quote-unquote statistically not as big of a piece missing, that's senior leadership, as you know. Again, you were part of that group with Bruner and Horner and yourself. You were a junior when they were seniors. That leadership is imperative, and losing Taylor McCabe wasn't as easy as some people thought, I don't think, Adam.
No, and when you're gearing offenses and just there's a system in place, a lot of that stuff was geared, just around some of those. I mean, she had heavy minutes, and you take a big puzzle piece out of there. It just takes a little time for this team to kind of get things kind of rewired. You're looking at different matchups, and defensively she was a stopper. So again, we've had that happen. You get an injury or two, somebody's got to step up. But I thought the bench did a really good job of filling that void, and she's a big loss, and she was a big threat on the court. But no, it's one of those where adversity hit a couple different times throughout the season, and we just kept grinding and finding ways to win.
To your point, I think the fans were really wondering. They hit that 3-game skid, and low-lighted by that Minnesota loss at Carver Hawkeye Arena.
Yeah.
But they call it the comeback, and then they went on that run. And I wanted to mention Journey Houston too, coming in off the bench and with big minutes and playing that 4-position scoring, but also the rebounding and defense. And so we've mentioned all the players here and that coaching staff, the job they did, but it wasn't always. But Adam, every game, as you know, the love the community of the Hawkeye community has for this women's team and the men's team, but sold out every game and will continue to be for these first 2 games at Carver Hawkeye Arena. It's just unbelievable to watch this team as a whole.
No, they've been fun to watch, and it's kind of that 6th man on the court. Even in one of those last home games, I know Jam was screaming for a timeout in a kind of a pressure moment. I don't think the officials could hear. So not many college women's games have that environment where you can't even hear a coach screaming for, a timeout. So kudos to the fans and the for recruiting and everything. I think it's huge. What a great environment, and hopefully we keep this momentum going.
It looks like, amen to what you just said, there are a lot of people talking, a lot of fans, a lot of pundits. Is it UCLA and UConn to win it all, or the other 66 teams? So it's the old, are you going to take UConn and UCLA or the field? And a little different than the men's game. It's really kind of a coin toss. Who's going to win? Who's the number 1 seed and all that type of stuff. The women's game, that picture seems to be a little bit more clear. There certainly has been some separation now with Texas and South Carolina and Iowa. Iowa's 7th in the final 8 people, but dropping down, they're the first 2, the top 2, there's no question, right? With UConn and UCLA. Then it drops down to Texas, South Carolina, Iowa, teams like that. So it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out, Adam, with those 2 dominant teams, if they're going to win it or the field does.
Yeah, it's this is kind of the haves and have-nots. I mean, they've got loaded rosters, big-time talent, great centers. They're a mismatch nightmare, both of those squads. So, but again, you never know. We saw what, we had Caitlin Clark, and we had some magical moments. You just never know in tournament time. But some of those teams are playing at an extremely high level. They've separated themselves from the field. So I imagine a lot of brackets are going to have those two teams listed, in the championship game.
I imagine correctly along with you, and I'm so glad you brought this up as we close out this segment, Caitlin Clark, because that shows everyone the appreciation, and not that anybody takes it for granted, but you got kind of used to it. And you're exactly right. To go to the championship game after beating South Carolina and then losing to LSU and then, beating UConn to go to the championship game, Caitlin's senior year, and losing to South Carolina in the championship game. Talk about a Herculean, unbelievable effort. I still look back to those 2 years ago, Adam, 3 years ago and 2 years ago with those two seasons. And everybody, some of the naysayers will say, well, she never won a championship. I'm not into moral victories and finishing second, but Adam, the job that the Hawkeye women did, as you're smiling with me, just to even be in those championship games still kind of is hard to fathom.
Yeah, I mean, we didn't have a loaded roster of blue chippers, and I think they used that to their advantage, right? We weren't the 4- and 5-star recruits. We came into this program, we got better, we played together as a unit, and yeah, I think it goes to show. I mean, there is kind of that Cinderella story, and what a story we put together. And Caitlin was at the center of it, but we also had huge, other roles that these other, gals played. You look at like Monica Shazano and, some of these names that really stepped up. We battled against the best and, got to the championship game 2 years in a row. Just, what a story.
Now get ready for it because the FIBA, the USA women's national team, Caitlin Clark will be playing again for the first time in almost a year after all these injuries. She'll be playing in the FIBA Worlds upcoming here in the next week. So those of you looking for some Caitlin Clark basketball action, that'll be coming up soon. So pretty cool stuff. Adam, great stuff from you, and we'll finish out the show talking some postseason basketball, your experiences, and the like moving forward. Folks, there he is, former Hawkeye basketball playing great Adam Haluska. I'm Dave O'Hara with Hawkeye. We'll be back to close out the show in just a few moments.
More and more farmers are taking a look at Merschman Seed's Power Core Enlist corn. Here's Ben Pieper, our product manager.
PowerCore Enlist corn hybrids are the fastest growing traits in growers' fields right now. Farmers know that we are choosing the right hybrids for the right acres to put more corn in their hopper at harvest. Combine that with Merschman Seed's starting line seed treatment, growers are finding that high-yielding consistency that they're looking for.
Contact your local Merschman Seeds dealer today and ask them about Power Core Enlist corn from Merschman Seeds, your friend in the field.
Welcome back to Hawkeye with me, Dave O'Hara, as we close out the show here with Adam Haluska, kind enough to join us throughout this whole show in segments 1, 2, and now 3. Adam, of course, former Hawkeye basketball playing great. Second-round draft pick in the NBA back in his playing days, played overseas. Adam's joined us all 6 years on this show, statewide television, but Adam has also joined me. We go way back, over 15 years ago, back in the Skype days, Adam, when you were playing overseas, if you remember that. So,
oh, yeah.
What a time it's been. Well, thank you for all that, but let's talk a little bit. And the reason I referenced all those years ago, you and I have been talking about this for years, the postseason. And we alluded to it earlier in the show, but I want to hone in on it on this third and final segment. We all know it's coming up on 20 years now when that loss to Northwestern State, your junior year, Bruner and Haluska's senior year. You guys had the game in hand, but out of nowhere, this little school from Louisiana, comes out of nowhere, hits the three, boom, game is over, you lose by 1. That's the suddenness. You're a 3 seed, you lose to a 14 seed. The only reason I bring that up is you're always kind enough to take us inside that locker room, inside that game. What I admired most about you is when you said, when they talk about fans, how it bothers them and they never forget it. And you said, this was a couple years ago, and you said, Dave, it's been 18 years. And I think about that game either comes up in my mind almost every day of my life because I talked to Kent McCausland about this too. And the last run that the Hawks had to at least the Sweet 16 and or beyond was that 99 team with him and Settles and J.R. Koch. And he said, Dave, all you're known as up until you're 22, 23 years old is a ball player. And now it's over. Of course, you knew you were going to go on, but Kent McCausland's career is over. And so that's why when you said to me a couple years ago, and I want to repeat this for the fans, you said, Dave, if it bothers the fans, just imagine what it does to us players. And that blew me away. Yeah, I know that seems like, gee, Dave, no kidding. But to hear you actually say that now that you're in your 40s and that you're approaching your 40s and you think about that and go, wow, that really happened. And it still affects you to this day. You learn from it and you move on. But that's still this time of year. That's why, Adam, I said to you off the air, let's bring it on the air. This can be the greatest time and it can be the roughest time, March Madness.
Yeah, and I think what hit hard, just on that team in 06 we were so good. We had a good connection. Horner had been hurt for part of that season. He was getting healthy again. We won the Big Ten tournament, went on a big run there, 3 games in 3 days. I felt like the momentum was on our side, and it's not that you come in overconfident, but I just think, we're Iowa guys at heart, right? When you talk about Bruner, Horner, Alex Thompson was on that team, Mike Henderson was on that team. We understood that Iowa hadn't had a Final Four run in a long time, and I think we thought with us being healthy, Elite Eight Final Four was definitely in play. And so the hardest thing is you got to get through game 1, and you can't plan ahead and look at game 2. But we had a big lead and let it go. Didn't hit shots at the end, didn't hit free throws, and that's how quick it can change. And I think for some of these smaller teams, they can sometimes have an advantage, right? You're not supposed to win. You come out and you take tough shots or you play a little loose. And for us, that was just one of those games that it did not land and fall the way we wanted it to. And again, it's something we got to live with. And every time that NCAA comes in and you watch those games, you're always thinking, man, coulda, shoulda, woulda. What would it have been like to get through that first game? And I thought the next matchup was going to be favorable for us. I think it was West Virginia. And like I said, we were clicking and playing well, but that's why this tournament's special. It's not the best team that always wins. It's one and done. It's not like the NBA. We've talked about that, or even overseas, you play a 5 or 7 game series. Generally, the better team is going to win. But here, that's what makes this thing magical, and people keep tuning in.
You had a guy like Luka Garza. You had J-Bo. The Hawks were clicking. They won the Big Ten tournament, and Keegan Murray was at his apex. And you're going, okay, here we go. And they lose to Richmond. But you even forewarned me before that game, and then after the game, you said, Dave, they had a magical run, and they won the Big Ten tournament, 4 games in 4 days. Okay, here we go. They end up flying straight to the East Coast, getting ready for a team they've never faced in Richmond. And here you go. You end up losing that game. And so you add that in, and I think people overlook that too. And you really highlighted this, Adam, as far as rest, travel. And that's not an excuse because everybody has to deal with it. Some get a better break than others. It's just kind of luck of the draw sometimes. But talk a little bit about that too. There are many more variables than one might think.
Yeah, I mean, just going back and replaying kind of when we won the tournament, won 3 games in 3 days. You're the last game. Usually the Big Ten's the last game of kind of the March Madness in the tournament. And then you go right into Selection Sunday. So we won that game, had about 30 minutes or so of everybody high-fiving, taking pictures, you're on stage, and then you get shuttled back. And we were in a room, and they did Selection Sunday. And so as soon as that kind of wraps up, now you're trying to get everything kind of packed, organized, ready. You fly home. It's a late night when you get in. There's media and stuff the next day on Monday. And then we were the early game on Thursday. And so you just think of all the turnaround. You'd been in Chicago. Everybody's trying to get packed and ready. We headed out to Detroit. And things happen so quick. And you're still riding high off the Big Ten tournament. You're looking forward to the next game in the NCAA tournament. But again, these guys are fully capable, and it's not an excuse. But sometimes when you make those big runs, some of those teams are at home getting rest, getting guys healed up if they're banged up a little bit. You just never know. And those games when you're playing in those conference tournaments and you got teams that, play 5-6 games, win, and then you bolster that right into the NCAA tournament, it's a gauntlet. So, like I said, I look back on it, even that Iowa team that won 4 games in 4 days, you're riding that wave, but you got to soon forget about it because a whole new chapter starts when tournament kicks off on either Thursday or Friday.
I thank you for taking us into that and repeating that story because I think a lot of us, and who wouldn't want that? That's what you play for, is to go there. But then when you look at it after the fact and go, oh, man, we had to deal with this. Like you said, you get shuttled off here, you're shuttled off there, and you've got to flush it and forget it and move on, even though it's a huge victory. And, hey, you won your conference tournament and you're on a high. All right, you got to forget that, and we got to move on. So it's a heck of a thing. And again, that's what everybody plays for. It's no excuse, but it certainly is interesting. And I thought, who better than this time of year to take us through March Madness? Adam, I know you've got big spring break plans with your family, and so I appreciate you taking time out today to join us for the whole show here on Wednesday afternoon, March 11th, after the Hawkeyes' big victory in their first round game, second round of the Big Ten tournament, where they beat Maryland today, and they face tomorrow on Thursday Ohio State. So hopefully they can beat Ohio State again for the second time this year. And then, oh, by the way, number 1 seed Michigan awaiting after that. And Well, I don't want to get any farther than that into the Big Ten tourney, but it's going to take a big run for the Hawkeyes. But good luck to the Hawkeye men and women in their postseason endeavors in the NCAA tournament and March Madness. Folks, there he is, Adam Haluska, former Hawkeye basketball playing great and a second-round draft pick in the NBA draft back in his day. Adam, always appreciate your input. It's great to see you a couple times a year. Safe travels to you, and thanks again.
Hey, appreciate it, guys. Always good to be on, and go Hawks.
Go Hawks indeed. Folks, for Adam Haluska, I'm Dave O'Hara with Hawkeye, and thanks also to my production partners at BettorEdge and BettorEdge.com, Greg Kajewski and James Siles. That's all from us at Hawkeye. Thanks to all of you.